Another week, another Reign of Roses episode. The Noble's Lot teased the realm management system, let Yannick ride sidecar to his father's dispensations from the throne in matters of law, and deepened our impression of who he and Fazal are, and what they believe in. Leeway's player Matt couldn't join us today, so it wound up being a closer examination of how Yannick and Fazal's dynamic has evolved. Without further ado, we open with Fazal and Yannick in the council chamber. It's a simple circular room with a surrounding archway and a tall roof, settled behind the grand hall. This is where the affairs of the day are handled in the realm. They are early to the meeting, and Yannick has been pondering something his father told him about last session: the circle stones. They are circular outcroppings, supposedly older than the upgrade walls of the city and castle done by his storied ancestor Ufonza the Builder, and there are 22 of them in total. He gets an idea that one might be here due to its central location in the castle. They look high and low, to no avail, but then realize the sturdy legs of the great table are stone. It's carved from the very stone of the floor, no less, not an independently movable piece of furniture. And they realize there's somewhere else to look. After a moment, they realize they might be able to take a peek under it. Circle stone detected, and not a second too late as father is arriving. Not alone, either. Sigurd is here, with his master of letters, the gnome's Fez, as well as the prelate, Shinainak. The prelate is the high religious official of the province, elected by his peers to represent the temple's interests in the area. The master of letters is a little less straightforward than that. The house suggests he runs the official correspondence of the court, which is true. But this position is also known as the court peacock, for a reason. They can witness a great deal and be seen without raising suspicion, flashing their feathers, so to speak, and they're at a nexus of information flow, thus perfectly positioned for their real job, spy master. In tow is also his older brother Daichi. The six of them sit down as Fez unrolls the comically long political map of the Emerald Vale. This isn't an accurate piece of cartography, as Daichi swiftly calls out. It's an important piece of political cartography. There are two types of provinces in the Emerald Vale, Secret explains. Ours, and ours to take. There are 5 provinces within their domain and 3 beyond. Their core 5 provinces, which convey the rank of Herzog, or Duke, while held at the capital Kwiatz, the winding and well-traveled Snake Coast to the south, the densely wooded Koyalda, the fertile high-culture province of Twin River to their direct west, and north of that, Borm, a rocky land where little grows, but great wealth lies beneath the surface. They witness some realm management and get a basic grasp of the 4 resources provinces provide: infrastructure, tradition, fertility, and wealth. Tad has kept a decent chunk of change in the treasure, represented abstractly by wealth influence tokens, and there's a smattering of food in the granary as well, stored fertility influence. Sigurd is planning a big muster of the elite forces of the realm, a show of strength and unity. He'll bring forth his lords and their grandest ritters and men-at-arms. It's a big to-do, and requires plenty of resources and coordination to pull off. But the intricacies of running the realm don't end at the table. Because once they've set the agenda for spring, the first season of the year, they head to the Grand Hall so Sigurd can pass law on the cases and petitioners before him. The court adjourns to the throne room and are joined by Amma, Yannick's mother, who holds the rank of steward. She seems a little under the weather, but she can sit and stay with them, it's fine. They bring forth the petitioners. Fazal and Yannick are off to one side, Daichi and Shinainak the other. Degrin has signaled a willingness to hear from his sons, as he now sees them as more mature and seasoned, and he underscores Yannick's accomplishments with the shell of the Vezer he slew hung at the end of the hall. The first petitioner is an alchemist named Auerban. He wants permission to build an alchemical distillery that can help the locally budding alcohol industry in Old Town, but Sigurd shoots him right down, or he would. You see, the West Wing burnt down when he was just a boy when the alchemy lab exploded. He's having none of it. But Yannick and Fazal talk him into giving the alchemist license to build, but only further from people and wooden buildings, out in the Harbor District. After that, we have Laurent the Burger, an urban merchant, elite from Twin River's capital city, who presents a free city charter, and is shot down with a vengeance. Yannick makes sure to let him know what he thinks of him on the way out. Not politely. Lastly, they have a legal case to be heard. A Saishi, or wandering independent cleric, has been brought in. His name is Bandrin, and he's insisting on a civil trial despite his affront being religious in nature, and the temple is compelled to bring him before the Herzog as it occurred at the outer edge of the city limits and thus falls under his domain direct. This cleric's crime? Resurrecting the dead. This threat to the Sornetto, or Soul Network, cannot be permitted. It is an affront to the basis of Albardian society. The two options are to take a brand to the face and to be exiled from society, or take the cloth, renouncing all title and property, to join the temple. He maintains he did nothing wrong in bringing a wounded and dying person back from the dead. This is a hard edge to the differences between our world and the prevailing view of the social system of the Albardian Empire. Secret manages to talk him down alongside color commentary from the players, and he relents, renouncing all worldly possessions and title, indeed taking the cloth instead. And then the Rosenmeet awaits. After squaring away the affairs of the day, the group is set to head out for the city-state of Riats. Sat right in the middle of Rose Bay, it is where all the roses converge once every 5 years. Yannick witnesses the inner dark grotto of his family's castle, where the black rose, a symbol of rebellion, is cultivated and brought with them alongside from their house rose, the emerald rose of the gardens from last session. Riats is a massive independent city-state which is a palatinate, meaning it holds imperial immediacy. It is also the voting seat of the Rose Bay Circle of the Empire, so whomsoever holds it has a vote on who becomes the next emperor when the current one dies. It's an incredibly important place. We glaze over most of the trip to describe the various roses, some with guns, some with goop, some with fangs, hopping into boats. One in particular, the blonde Otrid Gold, is shown as hostile. Fazil and Yannick are left on a canal island with a tall tavern and a prettish wilderness, while the boats pull away to head off to a ceremony at the Pillar of Spring, a mysterious location we'll learn much more about later in the campaign. While they're away, Fazil and Yannick get a cheeky reenactment of Hitchcock's The Birds. Split jaws! Black birds with horizontally opening beaks dive on them, led by one with a distinctly blue beak. A nearby lad urges them to cover and helps Yannick pick out and kill the flock's leader to scatter them. This is Conrad Gold, and he's eager to know Yannick. This is stymied when their fathers return and pull them apart, however. The Greens and Golds have warred for generations, and there's an imperial injunction on blood feud against them. Yannick wants to know why they can't have peace, but his father says now is the time for unity. Before all the roses, he draws them away, and then Fazil is ordered to hunt them down some cheesecake. The group returns, and time rolls on to summer. The Grand Muster is coming up, but there are two injunctions, or problems, preventing it from fully going off. One is Ida Bao's Baron, cooped up in his castle, not letting in the priests who are there to send off the soul of his dead wife, and a recent flooding which has damaged Bayran Scudder's hold, as well as the Crown Sawmill the Emeralds directly own within that town, which was built under Ufanza's supervision. For political expediency reasons, they must send a member of the Blood, and with key preparations and ceremonies coming to a head for Sigrid to oversee, that means Daichi and Yannick must be split between these tasks. Yannick has been studying soda masonry, and so he handles the mill problem. At the sawmill, they discover the province it's in, Koyalda, is a deep wood with more than just boars lurking between the trees. People cling to a few villages, and the town is mostly made of wood and not very large, save for the stone pier and sawmill, both of which are dilapidating for want of care. The sawmill is in disarray, but Lady von Vergrave, the other major lord of the province, has sent men and supplies, and is willing to help. But only if Lord Scudder is also willing to accept a vast expansion plan she intends to invest in, pushing the boundaries further into the woods. Now, after some deliberation, Yannick and Fazil determine they need to look into the perspective of those who live in nature. They ride out and meet with some satyrs, whose shaman tells them the circle of druids for the province won't speak to them because they lack a court druid, as they have for the past 100 years. They are advised that some things in the woods will reject any advance, no matter how moderated. However, there is an opportunity for diplomacy here, and they are told of an old man in your southern woods who would become the court druid, if asked. Now, the duo returns, and Yannick decides they will regulate the overhunting they've heard of from the satyrs and handle the local repairs themselves, but will definitely chat up von Vergrave, whose intentions they now suspect. That convo was handled off camera, to save time. Yannick returns and witnesses the grand muster of House Emir's troops and their ally, House Rabe. At the muster, it's impossible not to notice that Lady von Vergrave rolls upright in a steed made of magical roots and that refolds itself into a chair for her once she dismisses her mount. Suffice to say, the lads are suddenly sus about the source of that flood. The council reconvenes. The muster was a great success, and the rest of the year goes uneventfully. Then comes the time between years. I skipped over it earlier, but the council meeting in spring actually began with a letter from Yannick's uncle, saying that his family was in good health and he was proposing another go at Hakamos this time between the years. The time between the years is the season that is not in Rosenkrieg, when winter is over but spring is yet to begin. That is to say, a time of Rosenkrieg, but not in the timelines of Rosenkrieg. It's a time of chaos when the realm is ungovernable, as distances seem inconsistent, strange magical effects bloom, and high-ranking nobles just fuck off on pilgrimages and adventures. Because you might as well. It's sometimes known as adventuring season for just that reason, although some people do stay home and party. So, Muto Kaigan Emerald rolls up, an impressive Tachi named Heaven's Touch on his hip, and he and Sigrid embrace one another as bros. These men are clearly close, and they speak of old times and quickly catch up. Sigrid then proudly announces they'll be bringing his boys and Master of the Hunt along to Hakamos. Now, Fazl's been here once before. Hakamos is an ancient set of standing stones around an ancient stone circle, this henge being an artifact from before the arrival of Kiho. It cannot be found at any other time but the time between the years, and its position is hard to fix in space even then. One simply knows and goes to Hakamos. They're expecting it to be an opening to one of several potential cairns or tombs or other dungeons, but amidst possible they just won't get in anywhere. A green moon glows ethereally in the sky above. Uncle and Dad go onto the stone circle and tell the rest to stay back, after Umito distributes bundles of lit mugwort to act as candles and wards against the undead. It lets off a purplish glow, and he says it'll help with the spirits. That winds up being pretty important. Umito and Sigrid activate the circle via nondescript means, and a blue barrier descends around them as an apparition representing the astrological clock of Hakamos itself descends to battle them. Everyone else is locked outside, as henge spirits in the form of ancient Yseric warriors and wolves run in to fuck up everyone stuck outside the glow wall. Hakamos itself intones various layer abilities, starting with an hour for blood and glory, which grants temp HP to anyone who sets another creature to 0 HP. The mugwort candle in Yannick's offhand wards off spirits. They need to make a charisma save to even come within 10 feet, and while within that radius they suffer 1d4 force damage the first time they enter or at the beginning of their turn. In addition, they lose all resistance to mundane weapons within the radius, which is normally what keeps ghosts in the fight much longer than normal, at least until magic weapons are introduced. Yannick is pulled between covering for Fazl and Daichi as both flex their abilities. The ghost wolves dive through Fazl and Yannick, ripped at and smoking blue spirit essence coming off of them as they brave the aura of the burning mugwort to deliver a necrotic sickness in the form of a feral need for blood in them. They are hungry like the wolf, as it were. But both survive, and some much-needed wolfsbane is found. They call it a wrap without getting into any dungeon, but, they dusted up some ghosts, so there's a story there somewhere. And then they return home. It's spring, but they find that it is no time of renewal, but rather a season of death. Because Amma, Yannick's mother, is dying. I said up earlier how she began to recede from her steward duties after a weak showing last spring, and now the family is gathered to watch her die. The prelate is there, but no cleric spells are working. They've tried everything. Now it's time to be with her in her final moments. Her boys around her in a great tragedy at the tip. She informs Yannick she's going to teach him a lesson she had neglected to before now. Sometimes things just... She doesn't finish the thought. She seizes up and goes still. And there's a tragic moment of silence. And then Daichi yells, "No!" with such a force and fervor as to shake the chamber. Leaping forward to hold his mother, a white light shoots out and an angelic tone sounds from his mouth. Suddenly, miraculously, she is healed. Immediately, Sigrid and the prelate begin declaring he has just saved her from the brink of death. But Yannick and Daichi know the truth and trade a meaningful look. Yannick sees a dirty double standard emerging despite everything he's torn. His love for his mother and his need to be in accordance with the laws and traditions of the land he will one day enforce. This leaves us with a great and terrible understanding. To hush it up and avoid great scandal and shame, Daiichi Emerald, heir to the throne, will take the cloth. Renouncing all title and name, he will dedicate his life to the temple and hone the cleric abilities he has just exhibited. As we end episode 2, it is clear that our second son protagonist Yannick, has just become the sole inheritor of House Emerald. Quick Leeflections this time, but wow, what an episode. I was surprised by Yannick's hardcore rules, leaning on the rejection of the Free City Charter, and no resurrection for anyone, just joking around with it, but ultimately it makes sense. He's in favor of communion with nature, but a big proponent of tradition and nobility. That's because he comes from that place in society, and that's what's responsible for his elevation over it. We just had Fazil and Yannick this time, and we focused on their mutual influences on one another. Next time, we get a Fazil and Lee way buddy cop, and see the most urban Ritter, how the Ritter most urban does it. Now, a little note here. You might note that, resurrecting people is illegal and bad is a bit of a weird and hard sell, but it was actually very easy. I had an 11th hour idea right before the game started. I would just have one of the petitioners, didn't take that long, had the art on hand, be a Saishi who had committed a resurrection. And show, that's not going to fly. Take the cloth or take the brand. Judge Wolfgang's player already knew what would happen to anybody else because he'd seen the courtroom proceeding. It wasn't drawn out. The dude admitted he'd done it. But it showed the laws and rules of the land. And that helped give it a gravitas and really sell the feeling of the world in the story. And the players' credit, they took it and ran with it. So, that's all for the Back Scratcher report. Until next time, I'll see you on the Leecap. And don't forget, Sunday nights, 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. 3 hours of power on Rain of Roses.